Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/getstarted for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
Okay, are you guys ready? I think I am. Ah, hell. Let's go. Wait a minute. You're not supposed to do that. That is... Okay. Hang on while I pull this down, because that's too high. Okay. Shall we try this again? This is like extra stuff that you don't pay for. You're not paying for this right now. Oh, wait, no, you are. Because it's 1 minute into the show. Okay.
You're listening to Late Night Radio on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike?
You magnificent bastard, I read your book. I drink your milkshake.
How dare you?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Captain.
Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain.
Captain.
Captain. Captain. Captain.
Captain.
Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain.
Captain. Captain. Captain.
Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain. Captain.
No, not yet. Not yet. Don't pass out on me yet.
Terrain. Pull up. I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
Of course you realize this means war.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
It's Tuesday, June 2nd, the year of our Lord 2020. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's Berserk, Bobcat, Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, always spelled with a K, a mere 2 miles east of the locus of evil on the entire left coast, the Bill Mill, the belly of the beast, the Capitol building in downtown Sacramento at 10th and L Streets, where late at night you can hear the rioters and smell the burning vehicles. You can also hear the death of common sense and its concomitant wail as it wafts from that petrifying edifice late at night when I exit the plush, resplendent, sumptuous, palatial, and effulgently bulbous SHR Media studios. I'll also be smelling the odoriferous stench of burning cars, and sulfur and brimstone and evil emanating from that mentally destitute column structure aforementioned, what you are about to hear for the next 2 hours. consists of my opinion and no one else's. Because of the fear porn that has gripped this nation, the saloon is no longer open in the front, and the city of Sacramento has pulled my license and also told me to park my cars in the back because of riots. And if you think that this hasn't reached Sacramento, I am doing a show tonight, perhaps illegally, because guess what? Sacramento is under a curfew, and the studio happens to be within the city of Sacramento limits, and when I'm done at 10 o'clock, I'm going home, because I'm not sleeping in the studio. There's no bed here. That's okay. I happen to know a number of the officers. Got a great show tonight. In the first hour is Mike Fitzgerald, CEO, co-creator, owner of NCX Group. He is a cybersecurity expert. And then in the second hour, we're going to be talking to Eric RIGARD again. Eric wrote a great, I can't say it's a story, it was a post on his Facebook page. And those people who listen to the show know that I've had Eric on 3 times before. Eric is running as a Republican for, he's a Republican candidate for the 4th Assembly District in California. Always spell it with a K. So in prior times, I've had him on to talk about what he's going to do for the 4th District, how he's he made his primary. The dude is cool, so he's coming back for a vote in November, on November 3rd, and of course I'm going to be voting for him. So he wrote this post in Facebook about George Floyd. So in the second hour, I'm going to have him back to talk about that post, because if there was something that was soulful and from the heart, it was what Eric RIGARD wrote today. We'll get to that in the second hour. Right now, it's 8:07 p.m. on the left coast, which means it's 11:07 p.m. on the East Coast, and it's 1749.723 sub-growth cluster 45 this time in Bolivian time, because I never understood Bolivian time. For the first hour, Mike Fitzpatrick, I can hear you clanking around in the background. So, Mike Fitzpatrick, it's always great to have you here. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, BZ, it is a pleasure to be back with you tonight. I'm doing well.
Thank you. Let's start at the start. Now, my understanding is that you kind of been peeking around for equipment, and you're thinking about doing your own podcast, and I made a couple of recommendations to you, and you already bought some equipment. And one of the things that you bought, by the way, if I didn't already tell you, and I think I did, is really cool. You bought a Rode RODE Procaster, which is a really cool board for doing podcasts, and it can do video as well. I don't know if you grokked onto that concept, but it's a great router for all things audio and video as well. You can make that thing do a ton of stuff. Not really very cheap. It's generally about $1,000 or a little bit more if you buy it retail. But that tells me you're on the cusp of doing some podcasts. So since you're here and I'm here, tell us about what kind of podcast you're thinking about doing, Mike Fitzgerald. Mike Fitzpatrick.
Well, you know what? I had a guy that I went to school with through high school. His name was Mike Fitzgerald as well. So he had the locker room above, or the locker above mine in the grand scheme of things. But no, I've had a podcast through the years, and the most recent incarnation is called Bite Size Security, and I've been recording it off and on through Anchor, and it's designed to be about a 5-minute executive summary on a topic within cybersecurity. But as we've gone into COVID, and as we're coming through COVID, and probably because of the riots, going back into COVID, I figured that I'll use some of this time, set up some interviews with some world-class friends of mine in the cybersecurity and privacy world, because I think, part of what we're going to maybe talk about tonight a little bit is contact tracing and how that could possibly violate your privacy rights when it comes to HIPAA or FERPA with kids.
Yeah, that could never go wrong.
You could never go wrong. All the schools are using Zoom for classrooms. Well, the Chinese government always has a back door in any technology used or developed in China.
Yeah.
Well, Zoom is a Chinese company for the most part. It is U.S. incorporated, but all development is in China, all the servers in China. So there's a very good chance that whatever meetings anybody is having on Zoom is being recorded for the CCP.
Yeah.
So
there are friends. Just to ask the left, there are friends.
Oh, so I think that there's some serious violations with contact tracing, and that are going to be perfect for some of my constitutional lawyer friends to go after Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment protections related to that, not to mention HIPAA violations, FERPA violations for schools, California CCPA, which we talked about before. It is going to be interesting.
Okay, let's start at the start again, where you're... Well, let me back up just a bit. And I am big enough, folks, that I deserve my own bell when I back up. So this is BZ going back a little bit. Ding, ding, ding. So your podcast, when do you anticipate that coming? And is it going to be like another 5-minute kind of thing where you update it fairly frequently? Is that the goal?
Well, I'm going to go back to doing it weekly. I started doing a podcast, good night, back around 2007 or 8 on a radio station down here in Southern California for a half hour.
Nice.
And, so it was fun. I interviewed several FBI cybercrime agents, special agents, interviewed Wes Shu, who is the U.S. attorney for Los Angeles on cybercrime issues back in the day. Mary Bono Mack, I interviewed her for the podcast in the past. The conversation off air was far better than what we actually recorded because, I didn't know this about Mary, but her mother was part of the Manhattan Project.
Oh, my God.
And she's always been a bit of a geek, self-professed geek, as she said during the off-air conversation. But, she's a wonderful person and did probably the best job of trying to get to a data security piece of legislation that made sense. But unfortunately, the Democrats were in charge and they wouldn't let it see the light of day.
What? God, were the flecks, Mike Fitzpatrick, were the flecks of enamel coming off your teeth, chomping at the bit, saying, "Oh, that Manhattan Project? Oh, God, I'd like to ask you questions about that." In terms of history, when you said that, I got all like lightheaded and stuff going, oh my God, the questions that you could mine out of someone who knows the history of that. How fabulous that would be.
The funny thing is one of my dad's best friends, his father-in-law was one of the gentlemen that actually worked on, one of the scientists that worked on the atomic bomb.
Oh,
matter of fact, out of the 12 guys that worked on that bomb, 11 received Nobel Prizes. He was the only one that never received or didn't receive a Nobel Prize, which is really odd. But my dad set me up in a conversation with him and had me explain a Macintosh to him. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
And then he went on to say, well, this is kind of what we had in mind at Bell Labs when we invented the computer. And I'm going, okay.
Yes,
somebody's had some fun with Mike today.
Oh.
But yeah.
It's like people think customarily of Robert Oppenheimer, and can you imagine having him here today to be able to discuss things like that? History. I am a fan of history, a devotee of history. That would have been absolutely fabulous. Now I did back up.
Go ahead.
I did back up a little bit. You're going to go back to making it weekly, do you think?
Probably weekly. I'm going to be disciplined about it.
Okay.
It's something that I got started on as far as bringing it back out is bite-sized security. And you can find it. There's about 6 or 7 episodes on Anchor FM, but that's also now Spotify, iTunes, all the platforms. So it gets distributed that way automatically. But about that point, BZ is when Mom got sick, and it just wasn't enough time in the day to do everything that I needed to do, and quite frankly, wasn't in the mental mind frame for it. So put it to the side, and so now that we've got extra time due to COVID and riots and curfews and lockdowns, okay, let's have some fun with it. And the Rodecaster Pro looks kind of cool.
Oh, I'm telling you. I did buy one because for a while I was thinking I won't be able to get to the studio, so I'm going to need something for myself at home. And I got a Rodecaster just like you got, and it's sitting in the box. I haven't used it yet. I'm waiting for my really special project to pull that baby out. But I want to tell you, it is fabulous. I got one. I haven't set it up. You're going to have a great time. So we want to get into a bunch of topics tonight. Folks, I'm talking to Mike FITZPATRICK. He's the creator, CEO of the NCX Group. Cybersecurity expert. Had him on the show a bunch of times before. With his kindness and good grace, I will continue to have him back on the show as many times as he'll allow. But for background, tell us about NCX Group. What do they do? What do you do? And who comes to you? And how can you help them?
Wow, that's a lot of questions. Let me put it this way. Every business today struggles with cybersecurity. I don't care if they're a 15-person organization all the way up to a global Fortune 50. They struggle with it. It is an ongoing war that they have to defend a constant barrage of attacks from. And in order to protect their data. So we work with companies both nationally and internationally to protect the electronic assets of the organization. The 4 areas of practice for us are information security, business continuity, incident response, and then we have a managed services practice to where we can actually monitor and take over the security operations of your IT environment and do it at a really cost-effective price, but give you that 24/7, 365 protection that most businesses just don't have today.
One of the biggest things that I remember you telling me, and it makes perfect sense if you consider it, was that when we think of a business, when we think of a major business, I don't know, let's say GM, let's say General Motors. And I don't want you necessarily to reveal anything about GM, although you could. When you think about GM, because they're such a big business and they're all over the internet and they have a massive website and they've got so much, it's such a huge corporation, the first thing you think of, I would guess, is they must have great security. It must be the best because they're so big. Or insert any major corporation in America, and you'd have to think to yourself, that company, that corporation has to have the best cybersecurity, the best firewall known to man. Do they?
Every business is different but similar, and I don't want that to be a roundabout answer. I actually wrote an ebook on this short ebook a couple of years ago called The 7 Deadly Sins of Cybersecurity. One of the things that we've noticed after 18 years of doing this is that there are 7 consistent areas, regardless of size of business, where every organization struggles mightily. And it can be anything from physical security, because without physical security, you don't have data security. From that perspective, we've talked our way into SCADA control rooms and water treatment facilities. We've talked our way into rooms where there are X-ray machines attached to the network and used, default username and password to gain access to the network through the X-ray machine. There's a number of different ways. There was a social engineering attack tonight in Los Angeles with a guy with a number of guns pretending to be dressed like a guardsman. And they figured out that he wasn't a guardsman, and thank God the police got to him. But those kinds of things from a physical security standpoint, can I talk my way in? Can I exploit your employees? Because God love them. They love to be helpful. They're trained to be helpful. And the hackers count on that, and they use it, whether it's a phishing email, whether it's an in-person voice call, in gaining information, whether it's going through your executive team and finding out through their social media platform who is going to be vulnerable to being manipulated to exploit the company. So those kinds of things we do from a reconnaissance standpoint and a vulnerability standpoint. Then you get into the whole cultural aspect, the cultural DNA, the security DNA, as I like to call it, of your organization. What's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what are your plans, what are your policies and procedures, those kinds of things. So it's a great little document, great little read. Hits on the points that cybersecurity is not an IT issue, it's a business process. And that's really the only way to be effective with it. There is no 100% anymore. You do your best to try to be as resilient as you can. Take the punch and be able to get back up and hold your lines.
Folks, I'm talking to Mike FITZPATRICK. He is a cybersecurity expert, CEO, owner, founder of the NCX Group. Is there anyone, Mike FITZPATRICK, in the United States, within the sound of my voice, in a general overall fashion, whose information hasn't been hacked or revealed by someone somewhere?
It would be really hard to imagine that somebody hasn't received a letter stating that there has been a data breach in their life. I think most everybody was probably had with the First American Title breach last year at this time. I've never seen a breach notification disappear as quickly as that one did last Memorial Day.
Really?
It came out on Friday of Memorial Day weekend, and by Tuesday or Wednesday, all notice of it was gone. Literally 892 million titles, information that goes with every homeowner's title was exposed. So bank numbers, routing numbers, wire transfer information, all of that was exposed through that breach. And it just disappeared as quickly as it was notified. It disappeared just that quickly.
Hacking is big business, isn't it?
Very lucrative for those on the dark side.
Who do you think, Mike FITZPATRICK, is the biggest benefactor of hacking? Not who is the biggest hacker. I'd like to ask you that question too. And then I'd like to ask you what the biggest hack was in the U.S. But the first of 3 questions would be, who's the biggest benefactor of hacking?
It really comes down to what is the purpose and intent of said effort.
Let's say financially. I know we need to probably break it down into militarily and financially. Let's discuss financially first.
Well, okay, so let's back up just a little bit. Who are they? I mean, the attackers today are organized crime. Okay. It's state-sponsored actors. Okay. It's hacktivist groups. Anonymous for a long time was part of that. So each of those entities have a different desire. I mean, you have gangs on the streets, the Bloods and the Crips, that are running credit card skimming on gas station pumps.
Yep.
So, I mean, it is lucrative. Information, credit cards is lucrative all the way up and down the food chain, no matter who the entity is. Information is power. So, so maybe it's financial, maybe it's credit card and credit files. The Equifax breach a couple of years ago with 472 million identities exposed. The value of said data based upon the FBI information of what a valid credit profile is on the black market on the street, BZ, of $1,200. So 1,200 times the 472 million, I think, makes it a black market value of that data of about 13 trillion. 1.3 trillion, I think, is what it is.
That's absolutely staggering. That is staggering. It blows the mind.
Number. It is a massive number. But knowledge is power. Information is power. I remember, what was it, probably 10 plus years ago when we had the collapse, the financial collapse in 2008, 2009,
right.
That time period. There was an executive that lost his job, some IT CIO lost his job, and he walked out with the data backup for the company. And, the news article said, well, that has a street value of about $25 million or whatever it was. And I always found it interesting that they quantified it like you would quantify a drug bust, what the street value of the data is.
Would that be a proper way to view it?
Every identity gets sold somewhere between 5 and 8 times.
Sounds like the loan for your house.
Yeah. No, I mean, the data changes hands greatly on the dark web, and usually it can be sold 4 or 5 times before it's burned entirely. It goes quick.
We got about 2 more minutes before the bottom of the hour break. When we come back, folks, we're talking to Mike FITZPATRICK, the owner-CEO of NCX Group. He is a cybersecurity expert. I'm here to talk to him tonight about, cybersecurity, but I want to get into some other things that I've noticed from some of his own sites. When we come back, we'll ask him about some of those sites. Before we go, though, in about a minute and a half or so, Mike FITZPATRICK, what was the biggest hack the United States has yet seen?
I still go back to the biggest one recently is that first American title one. I think with the information that is in that for the average person out on the street, I think that is far and away the largest and most valuable data-wise that we have had. Second would be Equifax.
That's right, Equifax. I'd forgotten about that, which was massive on its face. But the other dealio that I need to point out, folks, and Mike FITZPATRICK, this is his whole job. You either swatted a fly or you opened a beer. I'm not sure which just then. Anyway, it's a huge It's a matter of risk management for your company. You either have all your digital ducks in line, or it's potentially going to cost you possibly your business. It's a massive.
BZ, it will cost you your business. We know that 53% of all businesses last year experienced a breach of some kind. Of that 53%, 66% are out of business in 6 months. In this economy, you have a cyber breach. In this world today, you're going to be done.
Okay. Those are incredible stats. One more time, if you could tell us those stats, then I got to go to a break. What were those stats again? That's staggering.
Last year, 53% of all small and mid-sized businesses experienced a cybersecurity event of some kind. Now, whether that's ransomware, whether that is an actual or complete loss of data, 53% experienced that. Of that 53%, 66% were out of business in 6 months, gone. And in this economy, in this world today, in COVID and riot-torn global world, they will not survive.
There are so many threats to a business in America right now. When we come back, I want to talk about that and address a little bit more some specific hacking and also some activities. And just because we share a lot of things in common, I want to talk to Mike FITZPATRICK about some other things, maybe Wuhan 19, Antifa, and I want to get his opinion about what the heck is happening today as well. I am BZ. You are in the Saloon. I'm sorry it's closed, and I may be encountering some unhappy people at the end of my radio shift tonight, but fear not. We'll go through the whole show. I'll be just fine. We'll be right back after this. Now is a perfect time to go to the Electric Winkle Chamber or go get a pizza or maybe an adult beverage. Be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick you bellows as host, and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York. The Lid himself, Jeff Dunnett. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunnett.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Good evening. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is featured on the SHR Media Network every Tuesday and Thursday night for 2 hours at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific. Whilst manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ continues to radically change the world of leftists, one diaper at a time. Stop balancing your checkbooks. Stop cleaning your fish tanks. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is your magnet for truth, justice, obesity, a darkened studio, and late-night freedom. No United States of America freedoms were abridged in the making of this ad.
This is Shannon Wright.
And this is Michael Wright.
Reminding you to listen
to The Right Way with Shannon and Mike.
Every Monday through Thursday.
7 to 9 a.m.
Right here on SHRmedia.com.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the Unpleasant Blind Guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense League radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for airtimes. It's the Unpleasant Blind Guy.
On EDL Radio.
There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian Sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for being here tonight on the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. I am speaking with Mike FITZPATRICK, who is the owner and CEO and founder of the NCX Group, which is a cybersecurity concern. And he knows about all things cybersecurity. And in terms of cybersecurity, considering the riots that are going on these days, Mike FITZPATRICK, this weird, strange, bizarre little thought inserted itself into my Mark I Model I head. And that was this. Is it possible in some fashion that depending upon which business is looted, busted, entered, destroyed, etc., could one of the motivations for somebody getting in there be to acquire wherever it is that that business has its cybersecurity and hack it? I know it's a weird question. It came out of nowhere. But I thought, I wonder if someone is taking advantage of this situation and using it as a vehicle to get into a business. And then I thought, oh, Mike's on tonight. I'll ask him that question. It's going to be a stupid question. It's like the game, play a stupid game, get stupid answers. I'll probably get an answer that is really dumb, like BZ. Why did you ask me that question? I don't know. It's just weird. It just came through my head. That's all.
You know what? It's actually a really good question, because the answer is the looters are taking whatever is of value in whatever business they're ransacking.
Right.
So computer servers, laptops, anything electronic like that is going to be of value. Now, what they do with it and what they, if that is a target, if that's something that they've identified, I would not be surprised, based upon the level of coordination that we're seeing. There's several reports of bricks in different locations where
yes,
the protests are going to break out. So the level of coordination and orchestration and what seems to be some level of planning, I would not be surprised that if there are data targets, to be able to capture some servers of companies that are on their hit list.
I don't know why I asked it. It's just one of these weird things that just popped into my brain housing group.
It's a good question.
You had an article that I wouldn't mind going over at, let's see, ncxgroup.com. NCX Group, is that your primary website for your business at ncxgroup.com?
ncxgroup.com, www.ncxgroup.com.
Okay. And before all of this with George Floyd, one of the questions that I had for you tonight was in reference to the article that I think another individual wrote, but I wondered, okay, what's the correlation here? The article I'm referring to is Reduce Your Chances of Getting Hacked Due to Coronavirus Cybersecurity Risks. And I thought, okay, a disease and hacking. Where's the connection? What am I missing here?
Well, as far as I don't know that there's a connection other than the fact that a lot of what we do is, deal with viruses and try to help people not experience a ransomware attack, a malware attack, that kind of thing. So I think that that we need to, just it is what it is from a Wuhan standpoint. I have something weird going on with my site right now, by the way.
Really? Okay. Something you can speak of, or just not quite yet?
Not yet.
Okay. All righty. As you're looking at that, I went to your Twitter feed, and if you want to go to Mike Fitzpatrick's Twitter feed, it's at NCXCEO, at NCXCEO. And you had a question on your Twitter feed. It said, question, in light of Apple's contact tracing update, do you still trust Apple to protect your privacy? Contact tracing is about to be a very big thing in the state of California. They're pulling, the state of California, always spell it with a K, wants about, I'm told, anywhere between 10 to 15,000 contact tracers to find out information about you due to Wuhan 19 concerns. And this is where I specifically wanted to get into it with you tonight, Mike Fitzpatrick. You've been examining this quite closely. Apple has now said that with its new version and the updates, the software updates, it's making it really easy, air quotes, easy for you to be contacted and traced, because you'd want to, folks. Wouldn't you want to help being traced involving Wuhan 19? Well, Apple is making it really easy for you now with their phones and with their updates. Mike Fitzpatrick, regarding that and Apple's updates, do you have any concerns about security or privacy?
I have massive concerns about privacy. I also have some significant concerns about security as well. I mean, it's interesting as you go through. I'm just letting my development team know something here.
Okay.
So anyway, as you go through and you look at it, and you look at how how this can work in a joint effort between Google and Apple. One, they say you have to opt in. So if we take them at their word, then we have to opt into this contact tracing using your cell phone. The cell phone uses a Bluetooth beacon, and that beacon, if you come in contact with someone else within at the low end, is 10 meters. So it's not 6 feet, it's 10 meters. And so you come into contact with that person is identified as having coronavirus at some point in time. They go back through the anomalized data and see who that person has come in contact with. Now, again, it may not be 6 feet, it may be 30 feet. So it gets to be really interesting as far as how they can correlate the data, you know, in that utilizing the Department of Health apps, you know, some national app that may come as part of this. It's interesting. There was an article in Breitbart the other day with the riots in Minnesota. They were talking about how the state of Minnesota was going to utilize contact tracing to track protesters that might have been in contact with each other.
I was going to ask you about that. That's my next question because the article is staring me right in the face. GMTA, Mike Fitzpatrick, great minds think alike.
No, it gets to be a real concern. I mean, because you've got a lot of big companies now that are driving into the contact tracing business for government contracts. One being Salesforce has come out with a new contact tracing app. So all of your health information ends up in the hands of Salesforce or some other large entity that's now written software that isn't a healthcare provider. Your data is now in their hands. I mean, one of the things Google did out of the goodness of their heart to try to coordinate effort to get testing facilitated, you had to enter a medical profile into Google, and then they would tell you where to go to get tested. Well, now Google has your medical history.
Yeah, massive HIPAA violation. Hello, red flag to every American, massive HIPAA violation. Oh, Mike Fitzpatrick, this just in. Doot. One of the guys in SHR Media chat, in the shrmedia.com chat room, is Jack Alexander. Jack is from Australia. He's listening and watching right now. He wrote in chat, the Australian government is now talking about making contact tracing mandatory after the extremely low number of people that willingly installed the app. Didn't see that coming, did we?
Well, you know, what they're talking about is, and it's interesting, Australia has had a very low number of cases. I've been watching Australia for months.
Right.
From a COVID standpoint. You've got, here in the U.S., they're talking about disparate systems, a decentralized kind of approach. The data is supposedly kept on your phone. Whereas in the UK, for example, and I think it may be the same way in Australia, they want the health services to maintain the database, which becomes one big target for potential attackers.
Right, and why would you ever want any of your health information spread to anyone except your doctor?
Exactly.
If you're being, my opinion is, if you're doing this willingly, voluntarily, you're being really stupid. But the counter argument to that invariably is, well, I've got nothing to hide. Why shouldn't I? Okay.
Well, it comes down to, you know, and it's a great point. I was having this conversation with a friend tonight before the interview, and that is technology is a dual-edged sword, right? It can be used for good, and it can be used for, you know, the dark side with the evil Sith Lord. So you've got to try to eliminate unintended consequences. Well, the unintended consequence of contact tracing is that your privacy goes out the window. To all these regulations that companies still have to mandate, or that are mandated to keep up with California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, FERPA, which is education and the protection of student data, HIPAA, healthcare, GLBA, banking, finance, it all kind of goes out the window with this particular approach and where the data is. Then you have the whole other question of where in the world, literal world, is that data kept?
Yeah, who's got it? What country?
What country is it actually residing in? Now, there are countries like India. Well, India, your data can't leave the nation of India. You know, it has to be stored there. It can't be stored somewhere else. So there's certain countries have taken that step to protect data and mandate that it's within the nation's control. So you've got, I mean, there's good with that, there's bad with that. But again, today, if you're using Dropbox, no one knows where the heck your data is actually kept. And if you delete something, is it actually deleted from within Dropbox or some other provider along that way? Or is it just not showing on your end anymore?
Well, damn it, Mike, this happens every time I talk to you. You'll bring up a topic, and I'll grab my pen, and I'll start to write something down. Then you'll say something else. Then I'll think, oh, that's another topic for it. Oh, God, the first question that came to me after you said that is it even remotely possible anymore, Mike Fitzpatrick, to delete data? Truly, can any data anymore ever be completely deleted, or is that simply an impossibility from now on?
You know, it's getting more difficult and more difficult. One of the technologies that we are rolling out right now is a new command and control structure for encryption. And that particular technology will actually provide geofencing. So if the data moves outside of the country or outside of whatever confines you designate, the data cannot be decrypted. You can't do anything with it. It has to reside within a specific area. So there's ways, and we're developing ways for those kinds of efforts. But you know, it's getting harder and harder. They are closing the circle, shall we say, on having access and basically knowing everything about us.
You'll never be private again. Would that be safe to say?
I think that's probably pretty accurate.
Okay, let's go into this article. Folks, I'm talking to Mike Fitzpatrick. He's the owner, CEO, and creator of NCX Group. He's a cybersecurity expert. He referenced an article earlier from Breitbart.com. I'm looking at the headline. I'm looking at the article because I wanted to address this tonight, and then he beat me to it because that's how smart a dude he is. The headline says, Minnesota using contact tracing to determine if agitators organized a cell of terror. Well, what does that mean? Minnesota Department of Public Safety Commissioner John Harrington told reporters this past Saturday his agency is using contact tracing to identify the association of rioters arrested in the state on Friday. What he said was, we've begun analyzing the data of who we've arrested, and we're actually beginning to do what you wouldn't think as almost very similar to our COVID. It's contact tracing. Who they are associated with, what platforms are they advocating for. And we've seen things like white supremacist organizers who have posted things on platforms about coming to Minnesota. We're checking to see if people that have made arrests, that we've made arrests on, and that we have information about, are they connected to those platforms? We've seen flyers about protests where folks have talked about they're going to get their loot on tonight. And so to do this, though, one of the biggest questions I had for you, Mike Fitzpatrick, is, are they doing this going into the phones post-arrest? Or are they doing this in a general area pre-arrest, which is all the difference in the world?
I think it's more post arrest is the way that I read the article. That it has more to do with investigation after the fact and after post arrest is my takeaway.
Okay. What do we got? 5 more minutes. I think I got time for one more question.
Okay.
This is from a site called The Week. And it said, Anonymous returns. Hacker group targets police and the Trump administration. And the subheading is, protests against the killing of George Floyd are intensified over the weekend. So maybe I'm, kind of whistling past your graveyard, and maybe you don't really have any insight about this. But I was curious when I read that article, what's the relationship in terms of hacking between anonymous police groups and the Trump administration?
It's really too difficult to tell.
Okay.
To be honest with you, because there are several different factions under the umbrella of Anonymous, and I know a kid that at one point in time was, according to him anyway, was part of Anonymous, but he's also an Eagle Scout. So he's looking at it from the hacktivist standpoint and trying to do some good in the world in his mind. The other side of this is, you've got players in there that are nation state. You've got others that have other roots and other things. So it's really difficult to say.
Okay. There was a great question in chat from Jack Alexander again. And he asked, okay, but wouldn't a VPN mess up the geofence in terms of contact? I'm assuming, Jack Alexander, that you mean in terms of contact tracing. So does that make sense to you? Would a VPN, which is a virtual private network, if I'm not mistaken, mess up the geofence in terms of contact tracing?
I don't know that. Well, geofencing, I was talking about that from the standpoint of a new technology that NCX is rolling out.
Okay.
What geofencing and the contact tracing is using Bluetooth. So it's just going on in the background. It's running off of a beacon. So a VPN wouldn't have any impact on that.
Okay. Then my final question, I think, for the night would be this. In terms of contact tracing, and you read a whole bunch of stuff on social media, but in terms of contact tracing, the new rollout on various updates from Android and also from Apple on attempting to make contact tracing, allegedly for COVID-19, for Wuhan-19, easier. One of the things I was reading on social media was, well, it's fairly simple. All you need to do is shut off your Bluetooth. My Bluetooth is off all the time, except for it's on right now for the show, because that's how I'm getting your call through the board. But other than that, it's off. Is turning your Bluetooth off any kind of assurance that you can keep your privacy now and in the future in terms of your telephone and contact tracing?
I think there's something to that. I have not installed my update to my phone yet,
Okay.
because I want to gather some more information before I do. I think that is one possible countermeasure, but I'm not sure what other methods that they have included. You would need to download the app, whatever health app that would be tracking that information. Apple and Google are not necessarily doing the tracking. They're providing the operating system support to facilitate that API, that connection to do the tracking.
Okay.
So in order for it to even be remotely successful, 60% of the entire population of the U.S. would have to buy into that craziness.
Okay. That's a huge number in and of itself, which is at least...
Yeah, it's a big number.
At least slightly assuaging to me. Okay, you mentioned a whole bunch of stuff, and I want to do a show sometime in the future, although you and I both know shit is going to change, and it's going to roll down the hill, and pretty soon we're going to have raining frogs, and then we're going to have just a load of crickets coming out of the creeks and killing people and trying to smother you with your pillow at night. If all of that stuff doesn't happen, I'd like to have you back on sometime in the future. We'll talk about a whole bunch of stuff, but I'd love to talk about just the environment of Anonymous and hackers, who they are, what kind of people they are, that kind of thing. That's kind of fascinating, because the little mental image I have is a 15-year-old sitting in his PJs in his mommy's basement with 17 screens, a couple of or three slaved desktop units all together. His mommy's roof looks like the top of the CIA building. That's kind of the vision that I have. We'll get to that. But before we go, Mike Fitzpatrick, thank you for being here tonight. But if people want to contact you about security, cybersecurity for their business, where can they go, what website, and how do they contact you so you can help?
Okay, so normally the website where they can reach me is ncxgroup.com. Looks like we had a server blow up. Nothing related to anything else. It looks like there was a back end issue that took out the server. So the guys are restoring it now. But anyway, normally it's ncxgroup.com. You can find me on Twitter at ncxceo. There's also an NCX Group Twitter account, which is at NCX Group. And the same for Facebook as well, NCX Group.
Okay, it's great having you here. I will have you back. Like I said, I would like to have you back at least once a month because there's so much to talk about, and you and I both know. Between now and, next week, there's going to be so much more to talk about because it's 2020, and that's just the way this stuff is rolling these days. Oh,
it is very much a roller coaster, my friend. You got to hold on, and we just got to muddle our way through this and hope for the best.
Okay, so Mike Fitzpatrick, thank you for being here tonight. Take care, sir, and God bless and be safe.
Sounds good. Same to you, BZ, and vote for Eric Rigard. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, bingo. I'm going to have him on in about 5 minutes or less. Folks, that was Mike Fitzpatrick. We're going to go to a break and be right back and talk live to Eric Rigard. He had a great article today on Facebook, and I first thought, yeah, I'll read it. Then I thought, read it? Let's just get Eric Rigard here and have him talk about it. I'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey, are you guys listening? This is Shannon from Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media. I know you've been wondering where we are and what's been going on. Well, folks, that's right. We're back. So please join us 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday on SHR Media, on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, and Facebook Live at 11 a.m. on Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM at Facebook. You don't want to miss a minute. We've got lots of guests, lots of segments, and lots of interesting things. And let's face it, there's nowhere for you to go, so you might as well tune in. Again, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. We're back live on the air on SHR Media, 7 to 9 a.m. Monday through Thursday, audio and Facebook Live, audio and video. Yes, we are going to do video. Facebook Live, Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Hope to see you soon.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern, only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It is he that is me, bringing perspective from across the sea. Join me, Jack Alexander, 4 days a week for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the news and issues affecting life and liberty here in the USA. I'll show you what the mainstream media refuses to. Politics, border security, defense, healthcare, travel, nothing is off limits. Catch the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast each Monday to Thursday on Facebook, YouTube, and everywhere good podcasts can be found. Also, check out the website, www.jackalexanderexperiment.com.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick you bellows as host, and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the unpleasant blind guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense Elite radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for air times. It's the unpleasant blind guy.
On EDL Radio.
There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is the beginning of the second hour. Live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. I am BZ, the bloviating Zeppelin. You are in BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show. The first hour, I had Mike FITZPATRICK, CEO, owner, and founder of NCX Group on cybersecurity. What's going on today? In the second hour, for the first, 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to have a gentleman that I have had on the show before, and it was a pleasure to have him, a great guy. And everyone knows that I am in the state of California, always spell it with a K. And when I tell you that I'm broadcasting in a little studio 2 miles east of the Bill Mill downtown at 10th and L Street in Sacramento, well, I really am. And Eric RIGARD knows this. He's been here to the studio, and the first couple of times we've spoken to him, I wanted to talk to Eric because he is the Republican candidate for the 4th Assembly District in California, which encompasses South Sacramento down to Elk Grove and points into Lodi. And it's a really diverse population, and as anybody with half a brain on their head knows, California, always spell it with a K, has been historically massively Democrat for quite some time. But I got to support somebody with the kind of mores and values that Eric RIGARD has. I've already contributed to his campaign. I'll be contributing again. He won the primary. He's coming back in November. So you got to vote for the guy. Go back and listen to my shows so that you can understand what kind of a man he is. And yes, I'm hyping Eric RIGARD for Assembly. There will be another show when I do that again. But he's here tonight because I was on his Facebook page, and he wrote an incredibly powerful post about George Floyd. And I thought, this is significant. This is from the heart. This is pointed, and people need to hear it. So on Facebook, I said, hey, would you mind if I read this over the air? I think people would really want to hear what you've written here. And then I thought, wait a minute, what are you doing? Don't be a moron. He's here in Sacramento. He doesn't have to come to the studio, dummy. Why should you read his stuff? He can call in. So I asked Eric if he could be here tonight to talk about his very profound feelings regarding George Floyd and what happened. It was an incredible piece, an incredible article, an incredible post. Eric RIGARD, thank you so very kindly for being here tonight, sir.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. I spent a little bit of time, I guess, during the last week, thinking about everything, about the whole incident with George Floyd, and now kind of the aftermath of it all. What the heck is going on? Protests are actually encouraged. They're legal. It's, you can go out and protest, but man, the anarchy and the destruction of property and things like that's way out of line. And especially when you take into consideration that George Floyd's family, his brother, his mother, his family have been asking for people. They said, hey, go out and protest peacefully.
Yes.
But don't tear up stuff. Don't destroy stuff. I spent time during the last couple of days seeing clips of different people on TV and being caught on social media and whatnot in front of their stores. These are black folks. These are folks that their businesses are getting torn up in this melee. And they're saying, why? Why is this going on? Why is this happening? Nobody asked you to come here to this neighborhood and tear this up. It's really heart gut wrenching, to say the least. What's going on. And I just wanted to pour out to people. It doesn't make any difference if you could take everything away, strip away the black, the white, everything, strip it all away. It's still a man who died at the hands of another, and it shouldn't have happened that way. Some people say, well, he had several different health issues and stuff like that contributed. Well, I would have rather, if he was going to die, let him die on his own, but not with somebody's knee on his neck, and it just has really inflamed a lot of people. Now, there are a lot of people that it's just grievance, there's like, another black man, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, It is. But when you think about it in terms of the overall, number of deaths and things like that happen, it's so minuscule. The fact is, he, as a human being, did not have to die with somebody having their knee, driven into his neck like that, no matter what he did. And then the ensuing protest and just the anarchists that are out there that are throwing bricks and breaking open windows and all the looting. And what sense is it? Number one, what is it proving? What is it doing? It's not doing anything for him. As a matter of fact, I wrote in there, I said, do we even remember the name George Floyd? Can we even remember his name? Because it's so far detached from what the original issue was. And that's really what really bothered me. That's the thing that stirred me up to actually write the piece. It's on Facebook. It's on my Facebook page. Anybody can go in there, take a look at it, and comment. But it just started coming out of me as I was thinking about it. I started writing it down, and I guess a few pages later, it dried up. So, we've got to be able to talk to one another instead of talking at one another and past one another. All cops are not murderers or not killers. All black people are not victims. All white people are not racist. But if you watch what's on TV, that's the image that you get. And we just need to put it in context and come up with solutions. I really believe if we actually sat down and talked to one another, we could come up with some solutions. As a matter of fact, there's a young man here in town. I've reached out to him and said, hey, let's get a summit together and sit down and start coming up with solutions for this thing. Let's do that. Let's invest our time in that as opposed to being a part of anything that might be perceived as being destructive. So that's kind of where I'm at with the whole situation.
Eric RIGARD, I had you on the show because you were local. The show is in Sacramento. You've been in the studio before a couple of times. Yeah. I've spoken to you over the telephone before. I will continue to speak to you. I'm going to be voting for you. The wife is going to be voting for you come November. You won your primary. You are on your way. One of the major reasons that I wanted to speak to you, and I sensed this from your writings, and I sensed this from, Lonnie Poindexter, who is a friend of the show, turned me on to you and said, this is a great guy and you need to talk to him. Oh, and by the way, he's running for California's 4th Assembly District. Great, cool, bring him on. But the thing that I understood about you that I think sitting down and speaking to you personally and also on the telephone as well is I got a sense of you that I thought I knew or understood, but when I spoke to you face to face and on the phone and now, the sense is that you really are a good and honorable man, and you really are trying to do something good here in California. I mean with a capital G, good. Yeah. And there are so few people like you left whose motivation is such that I don't doubt what you say at all. That's what stuns me. I think that's what stuns other people and those that you come in contact with who talk to you about issues, topics, areas, etc., and why I generally, I don't have much faith in California. As a matter of fact, my goal is to leave this state behind. I've been here most of my life. I'm ready for someplace else. I don't want to see my money going down the toilet anymore as it is continuing. But there's a spark within you. There's a light within you. And the reason I want to continue to talk to you, and I wanted to talk to you tonight, is if there's anybody that has a chance, and we spoke about this earlier, of maybe just turning this state around, it's you. It's you. And so when I read that today, at the conclusion, I thought, this is all Eric RIGARD. This is all him. That's why I got to get him on the show. You're genuine. You're not a politician. You're an actual person who can sit down and have a discussion with people to try to solve problems. And that's why I knew this is from the heart. That's why I had to talk to you tonight.
No, I appreciate it. And, and it is from the heart. And my when I look at people in the legislature and the Senate and what they are supposed to be, at their core, they're supposed to be public servants. They're to serve the public good, the public need, and so many of them who are there are just there to hold a place and to keep themselves there. They long forgot about the people. They forgot about we the people. They forgot about the people of California. They've just forgotten about people and what people need and what people are looking for them to do. Most people, when you ask them, who's your assemblyman, they don't even know who the heck the assembly person is. They vote kind of on automatic, either a D or R or something like that. But I really want them to know who I am, what my heart is, and what I'd like to get done. And that, I think, is the big difference. I will definitely, when I go in there and I start my morning off, I'll start it in prayer. I'm going to ask Father God for direction during the course of the day with what it is I need to do and what I need to get accomplished. But I want to hear the heart of the people. I want to hear what they need. I can't always guarantee that I'm going to give everybody everything that they want, but I want to hear what they have to say so I can take it, kind of put it in the washing machine, agitate it around a little bit, and then pull out, a good, solid policy proposal for them, that works for people and that helps to better their life.
Eric RIGARD, may I read a couple of passages from your article in Facebook?
Certainly.
You wrote, does the expression of that anger or outrage mean that it's acceptable to destroy neighborhoods in cities across the United States? Will torched businesses, stolen liquor, and vandalized cars bring back Floyd? What does looting have to do with his death? Who is to blame for the destruction of these cities? Residents who have raised families, entrepreneurs who have started businesses, people who have shopped at grocery stores, the sickened who filled their prescriptions, and parishioners who have attended church are in these cities. Their buildings, stores, pharmacies, and places of worship are being vandalized, looted, and burned to the ground. The reason I wanted to read that, and folks, you have to go to Eric RIGARD's Facebook page to read it. Eric, E-R-I-C, RIGARD, R-I-G-A-R-D, on Facebook. Read his whole article. But the reason that resonated for me is specifically today, before I read this, I was watching television, and an individual came on and said, my mother needs her medications. She needs them now. And they're right across the street at the CVS. Oh, the one that's burnt down. And she can't get them. So we had to try to go to another one. They don't have them, and they can't get them. So what is she to do with all of this that's around her that makes no sense to her, and I'm just trying to keep her alive?
Yep. It is so, it's so common, you know, why does in their own neighborhood, and they're just people living in those neighborhoods. They didn't deserve this, you know. They didn't ask for anybody to come and to riot or protest or loot or burn anything down, you know. And yet you're displacing them. Now they've got to go way out of their way into another neighborhood to find a store. And like you said, she can't even find what she's looking for even there. So it's like, what are they to do? You've crippled the people that live there by your actions.
The other thing that I want to point out, and she's just one person out of hundreds of thousands that are affected by this. And we have to go back to history to look at history and see what happens. But the other aspect of it is that would be all well and good for her to go to find something else. But this story's not played out yet. It's not done.
Right.
It's not finished. We don't know what's going to happen, and when, and where, and by whom. And that she, one of thousands and thousands of people affected by this, is going to be able to find some kind of an alternative. What does history tell us, folks, about this? The 1965 L.A. riots. What did we learn about that? I'll tell you this. Those businesses affected didn't come back. What did we learn about the 1968 riots in Baltimore? 52 years ago, there are still row houses in Baltimore from the 1968 riots that have never been built, that are buildings that exist in Baltimore that look like what you'd see in downtown Stalingrad after World War II. Yeah. Those businesses aren't coming back. What did we learn about the Rodney King riots in 1992? Those businesses didn't come back. Then in businesses in local communities, which were already struggling due to a virus, and you add looting and smashing and burning on that, those businesses in those neighborhoods necessary to people, they're not coming back.
Don't come back. You know, I wrote in there also that, you know, in the past, what is the one thing that has actually worked? It was peaceful protest, and it was the leaders of the church coming together and kind of leading through with Dr. King and people from other congregations of the churches. They all linked arms and they marched, you know, for what they wanted. But where's the church now? Oh yeah, the church is closed because of COVID-19. You can't go to church.
Yeah.
So it's like you've wiped that out, you know, and now they can go to Walmart, they can go to the drugstore, they can go to a weed dispensary, they can go to the abortion clinic, but they can't go to church. What is up with that? You know?
It's
and it's the one thing that within our society has kind of been a glue. It's helped to keep things together and helped us peacefully go about protesting. And the only protest that ever changed anything were peaceful protests.
There is more that you said. If you read the article that Eric Rigard wrote today on his Facebook page, Eric, E-R-I-C, Rigard, R-I-G-A-R-D. Read it for yourself on Facebook. It turns out to, when I printed it out, it was 4 double-spaced pages of common sense, of wisdom, of guidance that we need right now. Eric Rigard, thank you for being here tonight. I will have you back on the show. We're all praying that we get through this. We don't know what's happening in the immediate future for the rest of the week, but with your permission, I will be contacting you again because I always want to hear what you have to say. And the closer it gets to November, we're going to talk about some of the things in the 4th Assembly District again. But that having been said, thank you for your time tonight. I wanted people to hear what you had to say. There needs to be a calming voice. It's not coming from the people that we would have expected. As you pointed out, it's coming from the family of George himself. Where are the other voices that could lend their voice to that family? I'm not hearing them. We need to hear them. Thank you for being here tonight.
Exactly.
Thank you for explaining yourself. God bless Eric Rigard. Take care and be safe, sir.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. And one thing, it is the 9th Assembly District that I'm running in.
Oh, darn it.
That's South Sac, Elk Grove, Lodi, and Galt.
Okay.
So,
I will change all my...
Number 89.
I will change all my social media. I will make that right. What was I thinking?
No problem.
I apologize grandly. I apologize.
No problem at all. No problem. Hey, I will talk to you real soon. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. God bless you, sir. Be as safe as you can be in these tempestuous times.
I definitely will. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir. Amazing things to hear. That was Eric Rigard. How could I have gotten his assembly district incorrect? Well, apparently pretty easily. We're going to go to a break. I'll be right back. There are some incredible stories to hear. Thanks to Mike Fitzpatrick for being here tonight. Thanks to Eric Rigard for just speaking to me. More stories. Unfortunately, more tales of some grief and woe. Some positive things coming. It's another night. I'm not watching television right now. I'm doing a show, so I don't know what's happening. It's 9:31 on the left coast, midnight 31 on the right coast. These are times where you go, I just don't know. I'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Southern Sense is conservative talk with Annie, the radio chick you bellows as host, and C.S. Bennett co-host. Informative, fun, irreverent, and politically incorrect. You never know where they'll go, but you'll love the journey. Annie is a top conservative host on Top Talk Radio and features some of the finest guests packed with important politicians and newsmakers. Listen every Friday, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern, noon to 3 Pacific, on the SHR Media Network. Remember, Southern Sense is common sense.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York. The Lid himself, Jeff Dunnett. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunnett.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Good evening. Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is featured on the SHR Media Network every Tuesday and Thursday night for 2 hours at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific. Whilst manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, BZ continues to radically change the world of leftists, one diaper at a time. Stop balancing your checkbooks. Stop cleaning your fish tanks. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show is your magnet for truth, justice, obesity, a darkened studio, and late-night freedom. No United States of America freedoms were abridged in the making of this ad.
This is Shannon Wright.
And this is Michael Wright.
Reminding you to listen
to The Right Way with Shannon and Mike.
Every Monday through Thursday.
7 to 9 a.m.
Right here on
SHRmedia.com.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
After 6 years covering terror and corruption, the unpleasant blind guy is making a change. I'm Dave Milner. Join me on Spreaker and YouTube through SHR Media and on the Western Free Radio Network as I team up with Jeff Mitchell, host of the English Defense League radio show on blogtalkradio.com. Check show pages for airtimes. It's the unpleasant blind guy.
On EDL Radio.
There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian sackheads Clint plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty void in Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Folks, we're back. As is normal for my shows, because it's my show and I get to do it, things change. Now, I have cut sheets, things that I set up before the show. Generally, a show will take me a day to do, to get prepared. It's called show prep. And I generally have a focus for each show, and there's a direction that I want these shows to go. I in my mind, with each show, I have a beginning and a middle and an end. And I generally try to end the show on something dramatic and then go into my music outro. And if I've accomplished something, then I hope that folks have learned something, heard something that maybe they didn't know before, that came from an area not what you would customarily get from what I term the American media maggots. And tonight we've listened to Mike FITZPATRICK. He was on the first hour. And we heard from RIGARD, who is the Republican candidate for the 9th Assembly District in California, which encompasses South Sacramento and Elk Grove and a portion of Lodi, pretty big area. And he weighed in earlier on George Floyd. And it's no secret that I've been in law enforcement, and I can tell you right now, I'm not going to do anything more than a 2-hour show because I've got another show that I'm trying to hammer out for this Thursday. And the Alaskan always needles me. You need to make your show 3 hours. You've got so much material. Make your show 3 hours. Dude, I just can't do that. But I do. Every night I say I've got so much more material. I am looking at so much more material that I'm not going to be able to get into tonight. But after having spoken to Mike FITZPATRICK and RIGARD tonight, It's no secret, and I've never made it a secret, that I spent 41 years in law enforcement. I worked for 2 federal agencies and 2 county sheriff's departments in California, always spell it with a K. So in those 41 years, I've had a wide experience in law enforcement, from the federal side, from a state side, from a local side. And when I was in training, I went back east for training at FLETC. I went back east for training at Quantico. So I've seen law enforcement on the left coast. That's where I spent the bulk of my years. I've seen law enforcement in Georgia, where FLETC is located, right next to the city of Brunswick in Georgia, having its own issues these days. The bulk of agencies in the United States are small. So when you think of law enforcement, most people think of the NYPD. The last that I can recall, NYPD had about, and I'll ballpark it, 20 to 24,000 officers. Historically, departments on the East Coast have more officers available. I should mention specifically Northeast have many more officers available historically than do departments on the left coast, on up and down California, for example. And a perfect example would be, whereas NYPD has 20 to 24,000 officers, the LAPD has about 7 to 8, maybe 9 at the top. But they went through massive cutbacks in 2008, 2009. The Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, which patrols in the county of Los Angeles, plus some contract cities in the county of Los Angeles, has roughly 10,000 deputies, give or take, like LAPD. So historically, I have seen law enforcement writ large on a number of stages. And law enforcement, the state of its art, whatever that may be today, is confusing to someone like me who has seen the very best of law enforcement, the most challenging time of law enforcement, and now the most confounding time of law enforcement. Just when politics should not be inserted into law enforcement, we're seeing politics inserted into law enforcement. Tonight, I was not going to get into some of the specifics about what happened with George Floyd, and I will be the first to admit that I have not seen every video that's out there. So I'd like to address some issues with regard to George Floyd, because in the past 5 days, 6 days, 7 days or so, people that know me, that know my background in law enforcement, have been sending me emails and texts and messages publicly and privately to get my input with regard to what happened in Minneapolis. One of the other things that I'm discovering is the more I look into this topic, the more questions I have, the more answers I'm not getting, the more confusing it's seeming to be, and the greater conflict that we're having. And discussions at this point, apparently according to leftists, are out. Will not be discussing this situation. So in general, I've been asked to give my thoughts on this, and I've heard, these are air quotes, I've heard many things about what has happened on those streets with George Floyd. One of the first things that people invariably have asked me is it customary, are these the tactics that police officers use with regard to subduing an individual? And the thing that we see on media primarily is the officer in the blue shirt with a left knee on the neck of George Floyd. For whatever reason, we don't see the other three officers that are to our left, his right of that officer, that are aligned along the body of George Floyd. I don't understand what they're doing there. And again, this emphasizes I have tons of questions. Now, one of the more pointed questions that I received today from an individual who was an acquaintance of mine was, what was used by that officer whose name escapes me, and I don't really even care about his name? The tactic that was used, is that something that's taught by law enforcement in the academy or during training? And I had to predicate my response with, I can only tell you what the standard of training is over on the left coast in California, always spelled with a K, because that's where I was in training for years. I was part of the training of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department for literally a couple of decades. So I have a fairly decent idea. I taught EVOC, which is the Emergency Vehicle Operations course, and I was also the range master for the department, which means that I was in charge of all the things that go boom and bang on the department. Qualifications, firearms, etc. Now, ACB, close quarters battle, or hands-on tactics, is not something that was in my wheelhouse. But I do know what's taught in the academy. On the left coast in California, that is a tactic that is not taught. That isn't a tactic. So right off the bat, with my limited perspective and view, for those of you who have asked, that is nothing that you should see absent some kind of exigent circumstance, and depending upon the GO's general orders of each individual department. But that's nothing that is not a standard to which we in law enforcement in California, always spell it with a K, train. Now information came to me tonight from another individual who said the officer who was using that tactic comes from a department where that is approved. Now, do I know that for a fact? No. But there are so many things that are out there in the ozone, and all of this. I spent probably 15 minutes last night on another gentleman's show called Ken McClinton. He is the owner of TECN, which is the Exceptional Conservative Network. And I went into a fair amount of detail on his show last night regarding the same topic. And I discussed that. And I said, there are so many more questions that no one seems to be posing because it appears that no one is primarily interested, and it's going to take us a long time to get to the answers. And it's not as obvious and clear as what people think it is. It's going to be, there are 3 venues in copdom where you find negligence. There's negligence in hiring. That is to say, did you hire the right guy? Did Minneapolis hire the right guy? Trust me when I tell you, that's going to be looked into. So what do we know about this guy? This particular officer that we've seen in videos, and we've only seen one perspective. I'm sure there are many, many other videos out there, but I have not seen them all. I will be the very first to profess. There's negligence in hiring. What did we know about this guy when we hired him? There's negligence in training. What is the standard of training to which this guy, this officer, was held? What is our initial training? What is our in-service training? How frequently do we get training? And I will tell you this, and I'm not making excuses, I'm just giving you facts that I know from my experience. During budgetary times of crisis, and I have no idea what kind of budgetary times of crisis the Minneapolis Police Department has experienced or surrounding agencies, but in the times of fiscal crisis, the first venue out the door that leaves and is cut is training. Guaranteed. It's the first thing cut. I know that from definite experience over 41 years. Now we're talking about negligence in hiring, negligence in training. What is the third area of negligence? Negligence in retention. What do I mean by that? We hired a guy, we trained a guy. Do we keep the guy? Negligence in retention. What did we know about this officer? What are his trends or patterns? What is his requisite training, education, and experience? And what did we know about this officer prior to this incident today? So negligence in retention means, is this a pattern that we've seen in this officer? If it is, it's an if-then equation. If it is, then what have we done to solve that problem? That's the triumvirate of exposure for negligence in a law enforcement venue. I can't answer those questions. I don't have any damn idea. I haven't looked at the general orders of that department. I can only tell you what occurs for a standard or a substandard throughout California, or any place else for that matter. I can only tell you about California. But there are so many questions that everybody should be asking. One of the biggest that came up to me is this an issue of race? On its face, it appears yes. What I've heard, and again, air quotes, what I've heard is that these two individuals knew each other. Apparently, they had worked together before. So because my mind, I was a robbery detective, I was a homicide detective for a number of years in a 3,000-plus officer department. One of the first things that went through my wheelhouse was, is it something as simple as A and B got pissed off and this was personal? I don't know, but we better be asking the questions. Some of the questions that I posed on Ken's show were, what do we know about this area? And I'm telling you, I honestly don't know, but these are questions that went through my brain. What do we know about this area in which the arrest occurred? Is this a good area, a bad area? Is this an area of high crime, low crime? What do we know about the business where he went? In my department, from which I retired in 2016, we have what's called a premise history. Anytime and every time that you go to a particular address, dispatchers and call takers can pull up the premise history and tell you before you even get there to the call, what's the premise history of that particular business? Which brings up the additional question of how or why were these officers sent? What was the nature of the call? What did they know before they got there? What did they expect to see? Did they know anything about that business? Did they know anything about the premise history? Was George Floyd named in the call? Did someone have an awareness of him being on the scene by name? What do we know about the nature of the business, the nature of the call? Because one of the axioms in law enforcement is whatever you get dispatched to, theft call, robbery call, burglary, whatever it may be, it doesn't always turn out to be that when you get there. That's your job as an officer to figure that out. So I have tons of questions. The state of the art in law enforcement is you have a problem, you are sent to this problem, you are expected to fix this problem, and or if necessary, if reasonable suspicion builds into probable cause, then you make an arrest. Now, knowing the background of this area and the premise history and the general area where you are demands or will set a precedent in terms of, do I go there and can I take my time and talk to everybody? How many witness statements were taken? Well, you can bet by now there were a ton of witness statements taken. What did we know at the time that we were there? Why were we sent there? And if this is a questionable area where I know historically, let's say, cops are not adored, then wouldn't it make sense that if you encounter George Floyd, and let's say you don't know who he is, and let's say you don't know much about that business, but what you may know is that it's not the most fabulous of areas, and we're not beloved and adored here, wouldn't it make sense if you develop probable cause for an arrest, to arrest this individual, find your closest Mark I Model 1 cop car, ensconce him within, and take off, and go to booking, and make the arrest? Because once you've placed handcuffs on this guy, then that indicates to me a very serious detainer, that somehow the officers there might be potentially fearful for their safety, or they've actually gone and made an arrest. If you've actually gone and made an arrest, the standard usually is, but not necessarily always, that if the person isn't fighting and appears to be cooperative, boom, they go into the back of a car, the door is shut, and then either you start taking information for an arrest report, and another officer on the scene goes to the victims or the business and begins to interview people. But if you know for a fact you have probable cause to make an arrest, you make the arrest, you place the individual in the back of the automobile, and you transport. And particularly these days, post-Ferguson, the axiom around copdom is you generally don't linger. You're not the most beloved individuals around. Every cop doesn't get a Christmas card from the citizens. You might want to be very cautious in terms of officer safety. And if it would be expeditious, you might want to consider doing exactly what I said, getting the individual, making the arrest, putting him in the back of the car, and then taking him to booking. Why wasn't that done? I don't know. But these are questions that I have. So many questions. Could it be that that officer hated George personally? Yeah. Could it be that that officer is an outright avowed racist? Yeah. Is that a guarantee? No. What do we know about this officer? What's his premise history? We'll find out. There are so many issues and areas of investigation that, as far as I know, but my finger is not on the package of this investigation at all. I'm just asking questions. I'm posing questions. As all of these questions, if we're to do a complete and a concise investigation, all of these questions need to be asked. And more. All the video found, what's the chronology of the events? Am I right now even asking the right questions? I don't know. But if I don't know, you don't know. So, could it be something as simple as, this is a racist prick? Impossible? No. Could it be something that this was personal for this guy? I don't know. Part of a vendetta? I don't know. All I know is that if we don't stop rioting, turning this nation upside down, we're not doing anyone any good. No one. And trust me when I tell you, at this point, unless there's some kind of an immediate turnaround, folks, this is going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Monsieur has unlocked!
We'll meet again.
I have questions. We all have questions, and I don't have answers. I have some thoughts. Those were my thoughts. Like I said, I didn't get to a fraction of what I wanted to talk about tonight. I hope to address them on Thursday. I hope to have a guy on Thursday night in the first hour who created an alternate to Facebook in social media. I'm working with him in negotiations. Maybe he'll be here Thursday night. With luck, I'll be able to go to some of the things that I wanted to talk to everybody tonight. Thanks for listening. Thanks to Mike Fitzpatrick for being here in the first hour. Thanks to the great Eric RIGARD. He is a Republican candidate for the 9th California Assembly District. He'll be back. Thank you, sir, for your time. These are tempestuous times, folks. God bless you, everyone. Take care. Be safe.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children. Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good
night, Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.
Now you know the rest of the story.
That's all, folks.